How do you develop more self-love? A kind of love where you accept yourself unconditionally, where you operate from a place of being enough, and most importantly, where you know that no matter what happens in life, that you have got your back. My intention in this video is to share with you some practical tips that will help you develop more self-love. Hi, I'm Kiran and welcome to my channel where I talk about mindfulness, emotional resilience and spirituality. Now for a lot of us, I think we learn the importance of self-love through some hard lessons. Like for the longest time in my life, I didn't realize that my relationships were unhealthy and codependent because a lot of times I was looking for other people to love me and to fulfill me, never realizing even once that for a balanced relationship you need an equal amount of give and take, because when one person is taking and taking and taking, the relationships become imbalanced and the other person naturally at some point of time is going to start feeling resentful. So when many of my friendships went down the drain, I really had to sit myself down and really ask myself, what is it that I need to change in myself and in my life? And it was around this time that I really got interested in this topic of self-love. So I read many books on this topic, and while I understood the overall big picture of what it meant to have self-love, I still didn't know how to get there. It's kind of like, you want to go from, say, New York to California. You know what your final destination is, but you don't have the map to get there. That's pretty much how I felt. But one thing I suspected even back then was that happiness must be an integral part of this self-love journey, because I couldn't imagine anyone having self-love and then also feeling miserable. And so while I didn't know where to go or find self-love, I did know where to go and seek happiness, and that's exactly what I did. So last year I had an idea of taking on a 30-day experiment where every single day I would do something that brought me joy, that brought me happiness. And at the back of my mind, I wondered if such an experiment would lead to developing more self-love. Now, there are many things that I really enjoy in my life. Like I love to paint, I love to write, I love to sit in silence, and I love to do research. And of all these activities, I decided to choose sitting in silence for this 30-day experiment, simply because every single time I sat in silence, it gave me a sense of inner peace and happiness that I didn't know was even possible. And also, I had practiced sitting in silence before, but just not on a consistent basis. So I was really intrigued what this 30-day experiment would teach me. Now, prior to starting this 30-day experiment, I promised myself that if something worthwhile came out of these 30 days, then I would write an article about it, which I did, and on LinkedIn, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. So the way I went about this experiment was that every single day I would sit down on my meditation cushion. I would set the timer to 1 hour, and then I would close my eyes, and voila, that was how I did this 30-day experiment. Now, during the course of this 30 days, oftentimes I wondered, why do so many of us struggle with self-love? And perhaps part of the reason is that, in our busy life, we hardly ever get time to just sit with ourselves and just be. Like if I were to ask you, when was the last time you spent time just by yourself, without your spouse, without kids, without any of your friends? I think for most of us that we would be like, oh my God, I can't even remember the last time I was just by myself. Because one of the things I uncovered during my experiment was that in order to love yourself, you first have to know yourself. In learning to sit in silence every single day without any external stimuli, it made me present to aspects of myself that I didn't know even existed in me. So as an example, when I would sit down to focus, some days thoughts of resentment or anger or frustration would bubble up to the surface. Now, prior to doing this experiment, the only way I knew how to address these thoughts was either through Netflix or with overeating or with going on a shopping spree. But now I had nowhere to run. I had no choice but to breathe through these challenging emotions. And this daily exercise taught me what it meant to sit with pain and discomfort in a very tangible way. And in the bigger picture of things, this was one of the most profound blessings that came out of these 30 days. Because what happened then is, in my day-to-day life, when I would say feel angry, instead of reacting to the person or the situation, I would remind myself that, hey, you can choose to breathe through your anger. And I know it might sound ridiculously simple, but for someone like me, very intellectual, very analytical, this was a very hard lesson. Now, sitting in silence also nudged me to become really honest with myself. Like, my daily interactions would become highly amplified every single time I sat down for silence meditation. So, as an example, during the day, if I was mean to someone or I gave a compliment that I really didn't mean, then in the quiet space during evening, my higher self would ask me, hey, why did you give a fake compliment? And a lot of times I didn't know the answer why, other than saying, so that the person would like me. And it was the first time that I realized that in the name of being nice, in the name of wanting to be liked and accepted, I was really not speaking up my mind, and then wondering, why don't I have strong boundaries in my relationships? I had often heard that the one person that you always want to be honest with is yourself, and this 30-day experiment gave me a glimpse of what that meant. The other side effect of this 30-day experiment was that every single day as I sat down for meditation, I would notice that the first 15 to 20 minutes, my mind would be all over the place. It would chatter endlessly. Eventually, it would settle down, my mind would get quiet. And in that quiet space, I noticed that any unacknowledged or even repressed thoughts would come up to the surface. And again, the learning was to not judge them or fight them, but just let them be. Because when you can witness all your thoughts, the good, the bad, the ugly, and every single thing in between, you start developing observer consciousness. You start developing what it means to be a compassionate witness. And when you can witness your experiences without any judgment as an observer, healing becomes possible. Now, I was having so many realizations during this 30-day experiment that I started wondering, actually suspecting, if silence was a must for developing self-love. Another unexpected blessing of my 30-day experiment was increased creativity. Like, there were so many times that when I would sit down to meditate, I would get these insights, these ideas about things that I was working on. Other times, if I was struggling with a problem and I would focus on it during my silence meditation, I could view that problem in 360 degree, and I could see it from different perspective and have a greater view of which way to proceed. So much so that after 30 days, I had enough confidence that if ever I am feeling creatively blocked, all I need to do is close my eyes, sit in silence, and the answers would come in my mind. And that's the thing, when you unplug from the outer world and you plug into your inner self, your higher self, you will be guided. And it literally is a moment-to-moment guidance. Now, if I could take all my experiences during this 30-day experiment and synthesize into one sentence, it would be this: our willingness to befriend all aspects of ourselves is the key that unlocks the door to self-love. Now, if doing something you love and combining it with silence is the magic potion, or one of the magic potions that leads you to self-love, then my question to you is, what activities, what hobbies do you enjoy that can also help you and tap into your inner wisdom? Perhaps after watching this video, you might be inspired to take on a similar 30-day experiment. If you do so, then do share with me what you learned from this undertaking. And finally, I will leave you with this. As you learn to soothe yourself, to become your inner parent, healing is possible, it's inevitable, and self-love is a beautiful side effect. It is your willingness to sit through pain and discomfort while having compassion for yourself that will help you build that inner strength and resilience. I hope these suggestions were helpful. As always, please only take what resonates, discard the rest. Thank you so much for your time today. I will see you next Tuesday with a new video. Until then, have a beautiful rest of the week.